Okay, hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Joshua Jansen. This is Confronting Chaos and I'm studying philosophy. And something that's sat on my head growing up is the question of God. Is there a God? And if you look through philosophy and the history of philosophy, the question remains, is there more to this physical world that we live in? Is there a metaphysic? Is there something that transcends our reality? And then the other big question, what happens after we die? Why do we live in this state? Why are we limited to this temporal world? Why do we suffer? What is the cause of our suffering? Are we just atoms clashing together and we can't stop this suffering thing from happening? How can we come up with an ethic that alleviates suffering? And how can we extend our lives as long as possible so that we do not die? But clearly we cannot do such. So how do we orient ourselves towards this idea of death? And religion was always the answer to these questions. You will go to some afterlife. Your life has meaning. Suffering is filled with purpose. There is meaning to your suffering. And ultimately, you can be freed from the notion of death if you do these certain practices. Take your animal to the temple, sacrifice your whatever, go to the priest of this temple. This was the practice for millennia. But philosophers grew tired and they said, how can we actually understand the universe? And yet Christianity is built not just on this notion of afterlife and the notion that we can overcome death, but that it's built on a historical person that claimed to overcome death through suffering, and that the promise of the eternal life comes through the suffering, death, and ultimately resurrection. So Christianity sounds too good to be true. How can this be true? Someone in history claimed to be the solution to this problem. And philosophers after the scholastic period was like, no, we need to justify the way we live. And believing with faith is not going to be enough. We're actually just animals. But, okay, so I'm kind of just rambling here, but what I really want to talk about is this notion of death. Why is it that our position towards death leads to a more authentic life? And why does it relate to an ethic? Why does it lead to more virtue? I thought this morning about how the virtuous person is the most aware of life. It's not that they are just virtuous for the sake of being virtuous, but it's that they understand and see life clearly. And that is why we can identify these people as being virtuous. They understand life properly. They have wisdom. They understand how to act and conduct themselves in the world in the best way possible. They see the world clearly. And people who are rich or beautiful or famous, or they have all the pleasures in the world, if they don't have virtue, they're not really living. They're not really a human being, because they're being fake, or they are lying, or they're manipulating, or they're always angry, or they're always whatever. But they're living in this inauthentic manner. They're living in a way that is not what a human being should be. So the virtuous person is what it means to be a human. And we can recognize this. This is what philosophers like Plato and Aristotle began to do, was what is a human being? What does it mean to be human, and how can we live to be that? Christ does not just is not just presented as a figure that overcomes death and suffering and rises from the dead to eternal life and brings eternal life to mankind, but he presents the ultimate ethic, what I call the ultimate ethic of love, self-sacrifice, not grasping for the self, but giving the self for others, not hunting for pleasure, not hunting for things to obtain in the world, but being so freed from the things in the world that one is willing to give themselves up for that perfectly. And I'm writing an essay on Heidegger using his being and time to kind of present my idea of what it means to be. And for me, Christ presented this. He showed what it meant to be. And the authentic life that Heidegger is referring to, I find to be most authentic in the person of Christ. Someone who overcame the world by living out a perfect ethic, not just saying, I'm God, here's my power, you can now overcome death and have eternal life. But first, I'm going to show you the ultimate way of life, in a way of love. Love that dies and serves the other and doesn't serve the self. So, in many ways, what is the perfect human, what it means to be a human, was shown to us by Christ. That is the ultimate point. And only when you understand that first can you have the gifts that come later with that. And with death, to be like, to live in that ethic, to live in that state of love and servitude for the other, one is free to die, because one has already died to the world. One has become dead to the things of pleasure and self-servitude. The world is already dead to the person. And this is what I think the correct orientation towards death is to not shy away from the fact that you're going to die, because you can have a thought, oh flip, I'm actually going to die. I'm not going to live here forever. And that's terrifying. I might have an extremely painful death. I might be tortured to death. I might drown. I might die to a tornado. I might get hit by a car. Terrifying. So let's forget about it and run to pleasure and drink our lives away. No, no, no. The full acceptance of it is to accept betrayal and suffering and whatever may come your way. While doing that, living in the perfect ethic of love presented to us by Christ. Not just in the vague, authentic way that Heidegger refers to, but as Christ. Once one is free from the pulls of the world, the lusts and the passions of the world, once one is fully accepted that they're going to die and that it can come in any moment, in any way, then someone lives authentically because they know they need to live like that right now. There might not be a tomorrow. There is no tomorrow, as Apollo Creed says. And accepting this notion of death and the suffering and the inevitability of it, it causes someone in the present to act the way they should be right now. But the most authentic way, like I said, is to be dead already to the world, so accepting of death that one has already died. When I don't know how more to explain that, the death has already happened to you. You're so fully accepted of it that it's already happened to you that you're able to give yourself freely. And only once you're able to fully accept your death that you can give and serve for others. Only once I've accepted that I've died to the world can I give all my wealth to someone that is in need? Or I can serve the poor, I can live the way Christ demands, this perfect ethic. So one must be dead to the world to live like this perfect ethic. And once someone is in this perfect state of love, to be loved, to be the source of love as Christ was an example for us, then we are what it means to be a human, to be like Christ. So it needs this correct orientation towards death, an understanding of the way of life that Christ presented. And then, like the thief on the cross, you may enter into paradise. Death by death. Death before death. Freed from the world and filled with the love of Christ.